Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Monday, April 1st, West Fargo City Commission meeting. We call the meeting to order, and at this time I would turn the ceremony for the honor guard to present the colors.
Everyone please stand. Honor guard, post colors.
Reset. Arms.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I'd like to introduce Thomas Fetter from Troop 279, a Boy Scout within our community, will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms.
At this time, I'd call on Chief of Police Pete Nielsen for a promotional ceremony. Please be seated.
Good evening, Commission President Dardis and fellow commissioners. Tonight's a special night. Tonight is a night that we are going to officially swear in Commander Derek Cruff. Derek Cruff is here with his family, so thank you for his family, his friends for coming tonight. I'd like to read a bio of Commander Cruff to you. Cruff grew up in Leonard, North Dakota, where he graduated from Leonard High School. He received his associate's degree from Bismarck State College and a bachelor's degree from Minot State. He also received his master's degree in business from the University of Mary. Cruff graduated from the Police Officers Academy in Bismarck, North Dakota. While attending college, he worked for the Barnes County Sheriff's Office. He also worked for the Dickey County Sheriff's Office until 1997, and from there he went to the Wahpeton Police Department. Cruff began his career with the West Fargo Police Department as a patrol officer on June 11th, 2011. He was an Explorers and Youth Academy advisor, a firearms instructor, an investigator, and also became a detective in the investigations unit. Cruff was currently a sergeant of the Special Investigations Team, which included narcotics, street crimes, intelligence, crime-free housing, and the SRO program. In 2010, he was awarded the Employee of the Year, the Commendable Service Award, and the Active Shooter Response Ribbon, both of those in 2016. In his free time, he enjoys welding and raising livestock, and is a very active member of the Lions Club. He is married and has 2 children. I'd like to bring Commander Cruff up at this time. I'd like to officially swear Commander Cruff in. I state your name.
I, Derek Cruff,
Having been duly appointed a police officer for the city of West Fargo,
having duly appointed a police officer for the city of West Fargo,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and that of North Dakota.
and that of North Dakota.
I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
perform the duties of said office
perform the duties of said office
according to law.
according to law.
I will constantly strive
I will constantly strive
to achieve the objectives and ideals
to achieve the objectives and ideals,
dedicating myself to my chosen profession,
dedicating myself to my chosen profession,
law enforcement.
law enforcement.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to have Commander Cruff bring up a family member or two to pin the badge on. I'd like to take a quick second and turn it over to Commander Cruff, and he'd like to say a couple words to the commission.
I just wanted to say thank you. I've been a police officer for about 30 years. Majority of my career has been in the city of West Fargo. I've had great opportunities here. I've been able to hold many different positions and posts over those years that a lot of people in different agencies couldn't hold because they just weren't available. I've tried to dedicate my life and my career to the city of West Fargo, and I think the city's done well to stand behind me as well. So thank you.
At this time, family and friends and members of the police department are going to report to the training room, and there's going to be coffee and cake, and I'll be back in here to present the annual report and another agenda item here in a couple minutes. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Commander Cruff, on behalf of the city of West Fargo, thank you. Thank you for your service. To your family, thank you for sharing him with us. We are very, very proud of the police department, the men and women that serve our community, and you are certainly a great part of that and the culture that's been a long-time part of the city of West Fargo's police department. So we're grateful to you. Thank you. Officers, if any of the commissioners make a break for coffee and cake, stop them at the door. They got to come back to work. We'll reconvene the City Commission meeting. Before we get started, I'd ask again, everyone silence their cell phones while we're in our commission meeting. I would also call to your attention, Commissioner Mark Simmons is joining us via Zoom, and Commissioner Simmons serves as our police and fire commissioner, so I'm glad that he could be a part of honoring Commander Cruff this evening in his promotion. With that, Rachel, would you please call the roll? Here.
Commissioner Olson,
Here.
Commissioner Simmons,
Here.
Commissioner George,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Thank you. Let the record show all are present. First order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It is in your packets.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E is the approval of the minutes of March 18, 2024. The minutes have been included in your packets.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve the minutes of March 18th. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item F is the building permits. The building permit report has been included in the packet for your review.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Anderson. We have a motion and a second to approve the building permits as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next order of business is a consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have items A through F.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, items A through F as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on, we are now in the regular agenda. Item number 1 is public comment. This is where the public may speak on any topic that they have. We have 2 that are registered. The first one is Sarah. Is Sarah with us this evening?
I believe that's me.
Yes.
Yes, I did make it.
Please come to the microphone. Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Sarah Herlihy, 4243 39 and a half Avenue South, Fargo, North Dakota, 58104. I'm a local student, age 25, married, have a house, and I have a kid, so I'm finally finishing my criminal justice degree. I have a final project that I was assigned in order to graduate. I am, with the graciousness of the West Fargo Police Department, I'm working on distributing surveys out to the West Fargo city employees, public agencies, citizens, nonprofits, business owners, organizations like that, to come up with assessing the community relations and the police relationships with the community as a final project. And I do have to have 5 elected officials from the city of West Fargo, and there are 5 of you, and I believe I'd emailed you this morning with that survey and some more details, and so I'd be very grateful and honored if you would help me out in completing those surveys, and let me know if there's any questions. Obviously, it's not required for you guys, but I would greatly appreciate if you'd fill that out. It's all anonymous, and then I will be presenting the final project to the West Fargo Police Department at the end.
Excellent.
Is that? Okay. Thank you.
I know that all of the commissioners have received your email there.
Okay.
So, thank you. Look
Hello,
forward to-
Mayor.
Commissioner Simmons?
Yeah, sir, I believe I already got that back to you. Did you get it?
I did get a couple. I wasn't going to name any names for the anonymity part, but yes, I did receive it, so thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Sir.
Good luck on your project.
Thank you.
The second person that has signed up is Mr. Michael Schomer. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President and Commissioners. Mike Schomer, 620 Westwind Drive, West Fargo here. I do want to thank you for your time. I know I have a limited amount of time, and I'll keep it short. I've spoke to this commission on 2 previous occasions concerning the campground ordinance, and now we're here again today, and I'm at a loss of words. That's why I'm going to keep it short. I've expressed concerns. My neighbors have expressed concerns, and it was voted down last time it was brought up in 2022. I understand it was brought forward again, and understanding all of the concerns that have been brought forth, I was never contacted. I've stated my address on the record twice. I'm just wondering where the commission has failed to reach out to its own citizens. I moved here because I thought it was a family-centric environment to raise my family. We've invested in revitalizing the north part of West Fargo, and yet now we're saying we want to open the door for the possibility to slam the north part of West Fargo with campgrounds 500 feet away from our backyard. We've expressed concerns over the noise, light, safety, security of our neighborhood, and apparently that's being ignored again. And I guess I'm at a loss as to what has changed and what this commission has done to address any of our concerns. And I'll leave that at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Rachel, we only had the 2 registered, correct? Okay, all right. Very good. We're going to close out of the public comment portion of the agenda, and we move on to item number 2. Item number 2 is a public hearing of A22-6, zoning ordinance amendment regarding campgrounds. Mr. Aaron Nelson, Planning Director for the City of West Fargo, will be presenting, and it is to have a discussion on the approval of a second reading of an ordinance. Good evening, Mr. Nelson. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President and Commissioners. So this item was last, discussed 2 meetings ago at the March 4th, 2024 meeting of the City Commission. At that time, the Commission voted to direct staff to advertise for a public hearing prior to taking any action on the reconsideration of the second reading of the proposed ordinance here. So included in your packet is a copy of the proposed campground ordinance. Just a very high-level summary here. The ordinance, if approved, would add campgrounds to the list of allowable conditional uses within the agricultural zoning district. This does not approve any specific campground or anything like that. It just simply creates the opportunity for somebody to apply in order to establish a new campground.
On land that is only zoned agricultural, correct?
Correct. This would be only for the agricultural zoning district, and campgrounds would be restricted to the extraterritorial area, not permitted within city limits, in addition to several other criteria that are specific to campgrounds. The nature of a conditional use permit is that the Commission can establish any additional conditions on the approval based on the specifics of whatever is being proposed at the time. So I would also just note that really quickly. So nothing has changed since this item was last presented to you on March 4th. The ordinance is included as was back then. So the requested action tonight is to hold the public hearing prior to reconsidering the second reading of the ordinance. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for staff.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Nelson? Please, Commissioner George.
I don't know if it's a question so much as a comment, but I just want to make it very, very clear. This has nothing to do with campgrounds at the fairgrounds by that neighborhood, which is why they wouldn't have been informed, correct? Because there is not a campground approval pending for that space,
Correct.
correct?
Yep, this is a citywide ordinance that affects all agricultural zoning districts within the city's jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
All right, so as part of the conditional use, if a campground were to be sought out, or someone were to apply for a campground within this, would we be able to set the minimum distance farther than 500 feet, say 1,000 feet or more, if they come to the commission with an ask?
Yes, you would. So basically, the city commission would be able to include any conditions on the approval that are deemed appropriate based on the nature of the use. And so there would need to be kind of that rational nexus, if you will, to the proposal. And so as long as there's a reasonable reason that you would apply such condition, you can apply any conditions that you deem necessary.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Olson is next.
Well, let Commissioner Simmons go.
Commissioner Simmons, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. I just want to echo what Commissioner George said, and I want to make it clear to everybody that I am the one that brought this back, and I did not bring it back because of the fairgrounds. Nobody has called me on this. The reason I brought it back is because I did do a little more research, and if we ever want to have a recreational campground with an RET, we have to have some rules and regulations, and all this does, it puts that into the process. If any campground wants to have one, and I'll echo it again, they still have to go in front of P&Z and have to come in front of us to get it approved. And at that time, we can put on any, feet or whatever we want to at the time. So I want to make it clear to the gentleman that came forward, this is not about your area. This is about in the future if we ever want to have a recreational campground. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Commissioner Olson.
That's what I was going to say, that because the diversion is going to be completed soon, and there's the possibility if we don't have something in place to put these conditions on it, we could have something like we've got right now. So,
All right. Any additional questions for Mr. Nelson? No? This is an actionable item, Commissioners.
don't we have to have a public hearing?
My apologies. Any additional questions for Mr. Nelson? We leave the regular agenda and we are now in a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, President Dardis and rest of the commissioners. My name is Amy Zundel. I live at 2420 Harbor Lane in West Fargo. And speaking on the campground issue, I know the current ordinance says 500, and I also believe, just for the record, I know in my time out at the fairground, I don't even think that the fairground would be eligible to apply for that because they are, I think, like 350 feet away from what the neighborhood is. So I don't even think that it would fall within the purview of that. But I am in support of it. I know I also work in the medical field full time. It's very difficult for people to come and find housing anywhere, whether it be temporarily or shift work. Again, and speaking in the familiarity with the fairground, people who typically are there, it's actually ironically a lot of long-term nurses and physicians because there's no short-term places to stay. So I think it's great bringing more people in to spend money near our area and to utilize some of our public spaces. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zundel. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue? Public hearing is closed. We go back to the regular agenda. Again, commissioners, this is an actionable item.
Just one,
Commissioner Olson?
Aaron, on the comment that was just made that where the current campgrounds are located within the River Valley Fairgrounds, they are more or less grandfathered in. They're not affected by this being so many feet away because they were here before we made any rules, right?
Correct. The existing campgrounds are grandfathered as they exist.
Right.
If they were to go away, they couldn't, for an extended period of time. There would be limitations on them being reestablished, but they can continue as
Thank you, Commissioner Olson, for that clarification.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the 822-6 zoning ordinance amendment regarding campgrounds, the city of West Fargo. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 3. Again, is a public hearing item. It's an A24-4 zoning ordinance amendment regarding off-street parking. We're going to ask on Mr. Aaron Nelson, Planning Director for the City of West Fargo, to present, and this is regarding of approval of a first reading of an ordinance. Mr. Nelson.
All right, give me one moment here. Okay. You got it?
About a page 117.
All right. While we're pulling up the page here, before I present this item and the next item, actually, I do have a brief, just quick preface for these items. The Planning Department has been working with the Planning and Zoning Commission on a series of targeted text amendments to Title IV, which are the zoning and subdivision regulations. The first of which are on your agenda here tonight. Over the next few months, we'll be bringing forward some additional targeted text amendments to Title IV here for the City Commission's consideration. The targeted updates were identified as a short-term priority as part of the West Fargo Planning Needs Assessment, which was presented to your commission in March of last year. Some of you may recall participating in some interviews and some discussion on prioritization of planning needs that were ultimately documented in that assessment. And so for the most part, these updates, the updates that I'll talk about here, or overall, these series of updates that will be forthcoming, I should say, they generally follow some kind of key focus or themes here. Generally speaking, we're trying to better align some of our codes with existing adopted plans, such as the West Fargo 2.0 plan and some of our various other topic-specific plans. Also clarify and simplify some of the standards. The overall, I think, zoning and subdivision regulations were last kind of comprehensively, I think, adopted in the mid-'80s or so. And so there is just some updating in general needed there. And then lastly, some of these amendments that we're bringing forward are just based off of general public or stakeholder input that we've received, whether it's comments or issues that we've had as staff when it comes to development regulations in general. So those are some of the overarching themes. But for you tonight here, item number 3 are specific to the off-street parking regulations. And so that's what I'll start with here tonight. So this is a proposed zoning ordinance amendment, which intends to modify the city's off-street parking regulations in 3 primary ways. First, we're looking to restructure the content for clarity and ease of use. And this might be beneficial if I just scroll down. Attached to the staff report in your packet is the proposed ordinance amendment here. Essentially, we're just looking to repeal the off-street parking section and then reestablish it. The current ordinance, as you can see, there's a lot of just lengthy paragraphs of heavy text. And so if you jump down to the proposed amendment here, a lot of the language is the same or carries forward. It's just reorganized in a hopefully more simple to use way in terms of utilizing some of those headings and subheadings as opposed to large chunks of paragraph kind of narrative text. Secondly, we're looking to update the minimum parking standards to be based on measurable for a couple of different things here. First is to be measurable based on specific metrics like floor area as opposed to things like number of employees on the largest shift, which a lot of our current parking regulations are based on. For example, when you have a speculative building, we don't really know what business will be going into that building, and so we have no way of really kind of defining what the minimum parking requirements would be for that business. And so this would be based on the building itself or the structure itself, more than the number of employees or the way that a business operates a specific business. And then also to calibrate parking standards in relation to peer cities and some more modern best practices. And this does include a small general reduction in city mandated parking overall. And so we did have some intention in bringing down some of those parking requirements across the board. And then lastly, the amendment looks to update options for requested parking reductions. And so we have if somebody's looking for a minor reduction in their required number of parking stalls, if it's a pretty minor reduction, they're just looking to, reduce it by 2, for example. We'd like to have an administrative review process there where that could be administratively approved to speed up the development process as opposed to having them go all the way to the city commission for just a minor modification like that. For larger reductions, that would require planning and zoning commission approval. And so there again, instead of it going all the way to the city commission, it would just be a planning commission decision at that point, if that's something that the city commission is favorable to. Jumping back to the ordinance here, included in terms of kind of cleaning things up organizationally wise, we do have a table here that includes the minimum parking requirements as opposed to kind of that bullet point style list that in the current ordinance here. So I'd be happy to kind of dig in on any of these requirements if you'd like. But that's kind of the summary. And so the requested action tonight is to hold a public hearing and to approve the first reading of the ordinance amendment. And then we would bring this back to you for a second reading if approved here tonight. So that's kind of the high-level overview. I'm happy to dive into any detailed questions you might have for me.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioners, any questions regarding it?
Mayor?
Please, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I just have one question. If we were to approve this, and you mentioned the staff would make the decision, would whoever it may be able to appeal that to the city commission still?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I caught all of that, but I think if I understand your question, you're wondering about appeals to the city commission?
Correct.
Yeah, and I'll have to find that section here quickly. Let's see. I want to say that we have the appeals noted in here somewhere, but I'm not seeing it right now, and so I apologize. Might have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, if it's not, I just, feel that's something that our citizens should always be able to do, is appeal to the city
Yeah.
commission.
And staff would agree with you on that, and so I will need to verify that though for you.
Okay, thank you.
So in the proposed changes, are there any dramatic changes that any of our commercial, industrial, or residential people will be affected immediately if this passes?
No, I mean, I'd say the biggest change is just reducing some of those numbers, and so if anything, the requirement for a minimum number of parking stalls would come down. I don't believe any of the adjustments would result in anything going up. However, that does depend upon things like how number of, employees translates to the square footage of a building. But any existing businesses would be grandfathered under the existing code and would not be obligated to.
Unless they have a 20% expansion, and then there's another discussion that takes place. Very good.
Yep, correct.
Commissioner Anderson.
That was my first question. My second question then is, how would this apply to seasonal businesses such as snow removal, where maybe they don't have a lot of space for their employees to park, so they're parking on the street illegally and they're creating issues there, because they don't have the room to park there. So how would that impact anything that would change with this? Or I'm trying to understand what it says here with landscaping businesses and stuff, but could you maybe explain it like I'm 5, please?
Yep, so I'll try and answer your question. You let me know if I get off topic here at all. But in relation to any on-street versus off-street parking, this only applies to off-street parking, and so it does not have any bearing or effect on any of the on-street parking regulations or signage or anything like that. In terms of industrial uses, things like seasonal contractors, different things like that. We have this industrial use within the table here that basically breaks down a number of required parking spaces based on the different uses of their property. And so one space is required for 400 square feet of office or administrative area, for example. So if you have a shop building with a little small office in the corner of that shop building, that small office area, we would calculate the square footage of that office, and it would be a ratio of 1 per 400 square feet. The shop space would be kind of this indoor sales, service, or display, depending upon what the nature of the business is. If they're using it for any commercial area, it would be 1 per 500 square feet. And then I think there's indoor, storage, 1 per 2,500 square feet. And so the shop space is a much smaller amount of required parking. And so it all depends upon how those square footages shake out in terms of the number of required parking stalls. This is a minimum, and so businesses are allowed to have as much parking as they want. There is no maximum when it comes to individual businesses, though.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else from Mr. Nelson?
Just to follow up on what Commissioner Anderson said, so the snow removal, that's a vehicle-related, more or less, business. Would that fall under the chart, the matrix just above the industrial uses? Would we consider snow removal an industrial use? Or would it be considered a vehicle-related use because you're using vehicles to remove snow, like pickups and things like that? I was just curious where that would fall, because that's a different criteria there. But I can see that that's basically for repair shops and things like that and sales, but you just got me thinking about you're using a vehicle to.
Right. Well, and then this example, or, the instance that has come up recently was there's 30, 40 vehicles parked along the street because they didn't have enough space, off-street parking to park. And they were all parked on both sides of the street where there's no parking signs. So those, minimums drive people to park illegally. So I don't know if there's a way to fix that. And I don't think I don't think a business like that should have a lot twice the size just to handle parking for 6 times a year when they have that many vehicles there. But having the minimums there kind of drives that impact there that people, might have an issue with, whether it's getting to their business or not. So that's why I asked about it.
Sure.
Anything additional for Mr. Nelson? All right. We're going to leave the regular agenda and go into a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the A24-4 zoning ordinance amendment regarding off-street parking? Again, we are in a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to item number 3, public hearing A24-4? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Dave Withy, 2421 McLeod Drive East. I tried to download this from the website today, but the website wasn't working. So I don't know what the details are. But I'm always curious when people want to make changes, if they're making changes just to make changes, or if they're making changes because standards have changed. And if that's what's driving this, if experience elsewhere has driven this, or perhaps are we setting a new standard? I think in some instances in the past, we've made reductions in required parking, and there's been adverse effects as a result of those changes, letting people perhaps build buildings that don't have enough parking spots for their own business, much less for other businesses driven to the area. So I would just caution us to perhaps take that into account. Are we really going to be setting a new standard, or are we just meeting a standard that makes sense now? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Withy. Mr. Nelson, are these standards that are new only to West Fargo, or are they standards that meet some other criteria nationally?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on kind of where some of these numbers come from. The planning department, we are working with a firm called Clarion Associates, they work nationwide with jurisdictions all over the country on zoning regulations. They provided kind of the first set of recommendations. In addition, they did take a look at some of our peer cities, including Bismarck, Grand Forks, Fargo, and Moorhead, I believe. And then more specifically, we as staff looked a little more closely at Fargo and Moorhead. And we tried to be pretty on par with Fargo and Moorhead in terms of what their requirements are, but also kind of where we felt they were a little high. We did try and come in a little lower than some of those. And so it is a combination of those things. Additionally, we do rely on the Institute of Transportation Engineers has a parking generation manual that we utilize which is basically a big book of surveys from across the country that basically they take parking counts of similar uses across the country to kind of get a sense of what the average parking demand is for various uses. And so we did utilize that as well in comparing some of these numbers. So
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Again, we are still in the public hearing. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? A24-4 zoning ordinance amendment regarding off-street parking. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. We go back into our regular agenda. Commissioners, this is an actionable item.
Will we approve first reading?
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. We have a motion to approve first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve first reading of ordinance A24-4 zoning ordinance amendment regarding off-street parking. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 4. Again, this one's yours. It's public hearing A24-5, an ordinance amendment regarding pool fencing. Again, Mr. Aaron Nelson, Planning Director, will be presenting, and it's the approval of the first reading of an ordinance.
All right, thank you. So referencing back to my preface there, this one falls under the category of public comment. Just a little backstory on this one. In late December of 2021, the city approved an ordinance amendment that started requiring permitting for pool fencing, or for pools. One of the reasons for doing that was to verify that as folks were installing pools in their house, they were also installing the required 6-foot fence around those pools. And so as a result of that requirement, I think just the knowledge that a 6-foot tall fence around a pool is a requirement of the city of West Fargo became a lot more understood. And we have received several calls over the last 2 years, specifically with folks not wanting to install 6-foot, but would prefer usually a 5-foot fence. I think there's some pretty standard fences out there in the industry that people like to use that don't, the supplier doesn't offer a 6-foot variation of that preferred fence. And so we did take a look at some other jurisdictions in the area. For the most part, jurisdictions range from 4 feet to 5 feet is typical. 6 feet is a little less typical. And so the proposed ordinance here, really the biggest thing that we're looking to change is to reduce the 6-foot fence height requirement down to 4 feet. In doing this, the specifics of the ordinance itself, we would be referencing the International Property Maintenance Code, which has a 4-foot fence requirement for pools. And then in addition to the 4-foot requirement, we'd also be looking to enact some language that's similar to the city of Fargo in terms of some better definitions of some of the barriers, because it's not just a fence, it's a barrier. So some of the specifics in terms of the latching mechanism, the self-closing gates, some of those more detailed requirements, all relating back to just trying to keep, for the most part, children from accessing a pool that's unattended. So the request tonight is to hold a public hearing on this ordinance prior to considering the first reading of the ordinance amendment. The Planning and Zoning Commission did review this, and it comes to you with a recommendation for approval from them. Again, I'd be happy to answer any detailed questions you may have, but that's kind of the summary version here.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Nelson? Commissioner Olson?
Yes, thank you. Does this apply to the above-ground pools in addition to the permanent, at-surface pools?
It does. It applies to any pool or spa that is more than 2 feet deep in terms of water depth. And so there is provisions for hot tubs as well. Hot tubs are required to either be fenced or have one of those latching covers, and the details are specified in terms of what that specific type of cover is. But yes, the intention is to include above-ground pools within this ordinance.
So the people who buy an above-ground pool, say at a big box store, and just go put up in their backyard, should actually get a permit before they do that.
Correct, yep.
Because then they're gonna know about the fencing requirement.
Yep,
So it's twofold here. Any type of pool that's deeper than 2 feet needs a permit from the city.
correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Anderson?
I'm not seeing it in here. Is there a requirement to have a fence around the pool inside of another fence? Like if a fence is if the yard is fenced off, is that, as long as it's 4 feet tall, is that good enough? Or do they need to have another one?
Nope, if you have a fence around your backyard, for example, around the perimeter, and it meets all the requirements in terms of the self-latching gates and all that stuff, then that can be considered a barrier, yes.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Olson?
So all of the above-ground pools that do not have a fence around it right now, are they gonna be required to get one, or are they grandfathered in, or what happens to those residences?
Yeah, so for the most part, I believe, and I'll double check, but because we are changing the definition of, or the 2-foot requirement, I think is kind of new in terms of how we're defining what constitutes a pool that requires a fence and what constitutes a pool that does not require a fence. The previous rendition did try and get into some of the details of temporary pools and different things like that. But now that we're kind of defaulting back to the International Property Maintenance Code, which is more of a nationally recognized code, we are wanting to stick just with that 2-foot requirement, just for simplicity's sake. It's clear, people understand it. But for the most part, above-ground pools that were of a certain size, they already require fences. And so there shouldn't be a whole lot of pools that, we're not required to have a fence, but now are. We'd have to, again, look into the specifics in terms of.
Well, I can look out my backyard and I can see 2 pools that are 4 feet deep.
Yep,
No fence around them.
And this goes back to the 2001 ordinance, which I think a big reason for that ordinance at the time was people were just unaware that fences were required for pools. And because there was no permit required,
Right.
it was just basically up to the property owners to be aware of the law and to abide by the law. And so that's, I think, a little before my time, but that's my understanding of why that was initiated, was to bring some attention to the fact that the 6-foot requirement, or barrier requirement is in existence. So the main intent here is to reduce it from 6 feet to 4 feet in terms of the fence height requirement.
Anything else from Mr. Nelson? We close out of the regular agenda. We are now in the public hearing. Again, we're talking A24-5, the ordinance amendment regarding pool fencing. This is for the first reading. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item, A24-5, the ordinance amendment regarding pool fencing? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. We are back in the regular agenda. Commissioners, any additional questions of Mr. Nelson? This is an actionable item.
We'll move to approve first reading.
Commissioner Anderson moves to approve the first reading of the pool fencing amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5 in our regular agenda is an A24-6 backyard chicken ordinance. Again, we're going to call on Aaron Nelson, Planning Director for the City of West Fargo, and this is an approval of a second reading of the ordinance. Does this require a public hearing too?
It does not require a public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. So this proposed ordinance was presented at the March 18th meeting of the City Commission, at which time a public hearing was held. No changes have been made to the ordinance since this item was last presented. We did, however, receive 2 additional public comments, which are included as attachments to the staff report in your meeting packet here tonight. The action requested tonight is to consider approval of the second reading and final adoption of the chicken ordinance. So, as this was presented last time, let me know if you want me to answer any specific questions. Be happy to do so.
Any questions, please? Commissioner Olson.
Under item number 2 in section 5 on page 200 of the packet, it says that the following conditions apply to both the coop and the run. And my question is actually on the next page where it says must be a minimum of 4 square feet per chicken and may not exceed 10 square feet. So that's applying to both the coop and the run. And if you go down a little later, a little deeper into the page, then it says these conditions apply to the runs, C, and then it must not exceed 10 square feet per chicken. So you've got them, you're doubling up on the same thing. One place, so it's just a minor little thing there. And then on page 201, item 3, Under conditions and inspections, the last sentence says, any coop or run authorized by permit may be inspected by the animal control officer. Do we have an animal control officer?
We are CSOs then.
Okay. And then it lists law enforcement officer, and earlier in the ordinance says law enforcement's not going to be doing this, so do we want to scratch the law enforcement officer from there and change this to code enforcement? It's just one thing.
Yeah, I think the intent was to be inclusive of, I think we ended up adding the, or other employee or agent of the city, just to make sure
Right.
we're covering our bases there, so
Okay.
certainly we could. I'll defer to John though on.
Yeah, we tried to be as inclusive as possible, thinking the ordinance would, last 10, 15 years at least, and you might have changes in your hiring patterns, so we tried to be inclusive. It doesn't mean that person has to be hired by the city, but that's why I use the word may as a permissive.
Commissioner Olson?
And I have received some emails in opposition of this. The residents are saying that by allowing chickens in the backyard will also attract predators such as raccoons, skunks, coyotes, weasels, and things like that. They're smelly. How many of the commissioners here have raised chickens before, been around there? Me and commissioners and the mayor. I'm just, plus, I don't know how many of those people out there, hopefully they do their homework, because if they're going to expecting eggs, they're going to need to have at least 14 hours of daylight to produce eggs. So that means they're going to have to run electricity out to their coops through the winter and all that, and heat lamps during the wintertime, because those 6 little chickens aren't going to be warm enough, provide enough warmth in that chicken coop. They're going to die, their water's going to freeze over, all that kinds of stuff. So things like that to all be considered. And the main thing is, we're going to attract, if somebody has their nice lawn out there and they've got their run and they've never been around a chicken before, they're not going to have a nice lawn anymore. They're going to dig it up, and there's going to be, it's going to become dirt in that run. So just one thing to consider before we act on this, that it's, to me, if you want chickens, you live out in the country, because the backyard in a city is not meant for chickens. We're going to next have people asking, well, why can't I have the ducks too? Or why can't I have a turkey? They're the same, basically the same thing. So you can tell where I'm landing on this, my statements, but I'm also repeating the things that I've heard from other people. And I've had lots of comments. They just think it's a joke that we're even entertaining this, so.
Anything additional for Mr. Nelson?
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Mr. Simmons, please.
First, I'll say that my wife grew up on a farm, and she raised chickens, and she's the first one to say that they shouldn't be in town. As far as Commissioner Olson saying people are talking about a joke, I could see that firsthand when we read the Fargo form, what they called it, pecking. So, yeah, I agree with Commissioner Olson on this one.
Thank you. Anything additional? Again, this is an actionable item.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner George moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the second reading of the chicken ordinance. Is there any discussion? To bring a little humor to this, there's nothing mentioned about chicken thieves. Would you like to address that?
Well, no, I don't want to address that, but I'll be curious when the first time somebody has a chicken in their backyard and their neighbor's dog gets out and really causes a ruckus out there, and chickens are dead and things like that because they're going to fly into their coop, and that, or a feral cat comes along. It's going to be
Interesting.
Interesting, yep.
All right, Commissioner George, please.
Just a real quick comment. Both Fargo and Moorhead, it's legal, and they have not had any issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons, did you register a vote?
I did, as a nay.
Okay. Motion passes on a 3-2 vote. Moving on, our next order of business is number 6. We're going to call on our Chief of Police, Pete Nielsen, for a West Fargo Police Department annual report.
It's a tough act to follow, Commissioners, Commissioner President. I'd like to thank you for your time tonight. Let you know that tonight's very special for us to be able to provide you with our annual report. Our annual report is published today online, and as you can see, it's out for everybody to view. A few of the topics that I'd like to go over is we've had a 6% increase of overall crime compared to 2022. We've decreased in crimes against person by 2.8%, but we've increased by 6.9% in property crimes and 6% in drug crimes. With that, our calls for service are going up. Last year we had 29,000 calls, in 2022 we had 29,000 calls, but this year we logged over 32,000 calls for service, which is a large number for our police department. The department continues to implement new programs to assist the residents, community members, business members. Some of these programs that we did for this year were we had the addition of a second comfort dog. We launched our body-worn camera program. We switched to a beat system, and as everybody knows, we have this beat system set up so the officers are in a certain area of town, and the people that live in those areas or do business in those areas are able to reach out to the officers directly. We partnered with the Lake Region State College for the second annual Peace Officer Academy, and as of tomorrow we'll be training our officers on our virtual reality training headset. Finally came in, and the company will be at the police department training trainers tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. I'd like to show those VR system to you guys when you are ready to look at it. We also logged over 7,000 hours of training. Our training topics range from suicide awareness, de-escalation, ethics in law enforcement, anti-bias training, and emotional disorder awareness. Currently, we have 78 police officers and 13 sworn staff. We also have logged over 1,500 total volunteer hours, and a special thanks to our chaplains. Our chaplains played a crucial role in the July 14th incident, and they were dispatched to Fargo PD to assist in some of the aftermath of that. We also had over 2,000 calls for our community service officers, so as we speak about chickens, I think that number might go up a tiny bit. We've logged over 900 fingerprints recorded. We have 718 investigation cases that we reviewed, and over 1,900 total pieces of evidence taken in. We have countless community engagements event hosted throughout the year, and we continue to look to build on 2023 and as we move into the first quarter of 2024, very excited with our police department as we are right now. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Questions for the chief?
No, Mayor?
Please, Commissioner Simmons. And again, I remind everyone, Commissioner Simmons is our commissioner that handles the police and fire portfolio. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to congratulate Chief Nielsen and the entire police department. We are second to none in the entire state as far as I'm concerned, and that hasn't changed, and I don't believe under Chief Nielsen it will. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
I couldn't agree more. Our police department is certainly one of the shining stars that we have in the city of West Fargo, and we are very grateful that you keep our citizens safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is a request for an additional school resource officer for 24-25. Again, we're going to call on Police Chief Pete Nielsen for this item.
Good evening, Commission President Dardis and fellow commissioners. The West Fargo Police Department has maintained a close and positive working relationship with the West Fargo Public Schools through our school resource program. The success of this program is largely built off the connection made with the students at an early age. The relationship of that officer with the students builds trust and respect with law enforcement. Our SRO's responsibilities are divided in 3 key components. They act as a teacher, an informal counselor, and also as law enforcement officers. Our SROs lead by example and promote a positive image throughout their communities. However, it's been determined that our 2 elementary school resource officers are overburdened with lack of time to provide time to those schools, as there is currently 15 elementary schools for the West Fargo Public School District, with the 16th elementary school slated to open in the fall. The department, along with the school district, began to have some conversations earlier this year about adding a 3rd school resource officer, and the proposal was presented to the school board on Monday, March 25th. During those discussions, it was discussed about how we need to possibly break up those elementary schools into 5, 5, and 5 if we added another school resource officer. And due to the fact that a lot of the schools are outside of the city limits of West Fargo, I asked that the school district fund the police officer at a 100% cost of salary and benefits. This would bring the police department's total number of sworn officers from 78 to 79 in 2024. I'm requesting that the West Fargo City Commission approve this addition for a 3rd school elementary SRO for the 2024 year. That would bring our department having 9 school resource officers, which is a very large number. If the City Commission approves the request, the West Fargo Police Department would like to try to fill this position sometime this spring, and that would allow us the opportunity to have the school resource officer trained and ready to be implemented in 2024. With that, I stand for questions.
Questions for the chief?
Just a comment.
Please, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I know that our SROs are probably I don't know how far up it is in the line as far as officers for the state, but I know we've got a good chunk of them. But I will say this, that with 16 schools coming on board, it is absolutely dangerous that we don't have another SRO.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? This is an actionable item.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second?
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve an additional school resource officer for 24-25 budgeting year, as requested by Chief Nielsen. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is project number 1348, sanitary sewer rehabilitation, core area alleys and rear yards. We're going to call on Mr. Dan Hansen, our city engineer for the city of West Fargo. And the purpose of this discussion is to accept a bid and award a contract. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner, President Dardis, and Commissioners. This is a project that's been in front of you a number of times, and it is to rehabilitate some sanitary sewer that is in some hard-to-reach places for our Public Works Department, mostly in alleyways and in rear yards throughout the core area. This project will help revitalize the sanitary sewer for over 400 of our residences in those areas. At the February 20th, 24 Commission meeting, the Commission authorized this project to be advertised for bids. We did have a virtual bid opening that was conducted on March 21st, and there were 2 bids received with a low bid in the amount of $3,682,558.50 from CC Steel, LLC. That is approximately just shy of 10% over the estimated cost, which this is the That was more just for inflationary purposes is my understanding. I still believe that the project is vital because the sewers that we have in those areas are old and in need of repair, and any type of failure of those systems could result in backups of sewage into our constituents' basements. So with that, I would entertain any questions, but we do recommend that we accept the bid and award the contract to CC Steel LLC, who is a local contractor that we do have a very good working relationship with.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Anderson?
If this were to be approved, what would the timeline look like for this to get started?
We would have to go through getting the contracts in place. That usually takes a number of weeks to a month. And then we would be holding a pre-con, so it would likely wouldn't take place until, start would probably be likely in middle of May would be, I guess. It depends on how fast we're able to get those contracts approved. And we would be bringing forth those contracts for approval in a future consent agenda.
Okay.
And then work would continue throughout the summer on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll move to accept the bid and award contract.
Commissioner Anderson moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve project number 1348, sanitary sewer rehabilitation for core area alleys and rear yards. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? For the record, the amount is $3,682,558.50. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is an improvement district number 6059, 2024 sidewalk improvements. Again, we call on Mr. Dan Hanson, our city engineer, City of West Fargo. Purpose of this discussion is to accept a bid and award a contract. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you again, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. Once again, we're here with another project that we opened bids for recently. What this project is for gaps in the existing sidewalks throughout the city. And we did open up bids. 2 proposals were received. Roars Construction was the lowest bidder in the amount of $282,698.50 for this improvement district. And the results are attached and in the commission packet. We would recommend that we award the bid to Roars Construction for that amount. And I would answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hanson?
Motion to approve?
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to accept the bid and award a contract for project number 6059 for the 2024 sidewalk improvements for a contract price of $282,698.50. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 9 is an improvement district number, I apologize, item number 10 is a 2024 ADA ramp. It's a creative project number 6061, an approve an engineer's report and direct an engineer to prepare plans and specifications. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. This is a new project being brought in front of you, but it is something that has been talked about in the past. June 19th of 23, we approved and adopted our ADA transition plan. Inside of that document, it identified that there is a need to replace ADA ramps throughout the city that are not in current ADA compliance. It's important for us to be able to keep making these improvements as we go along. We needed to implement a policy of moving forward on how we're going to move towards getting the entire city in compliance. So with this project, what we're looking at is 2 different types of areas. One is where we intend for Public Works to do their annual mill and overlay projects, because one of the requirements by law through ADA standards is anytime you do an improvement to a roadway more significant than basically a seal coat, which would include a mill and overlay, you're required by law to make sure that the ADA ramps are compliant with current ADA standards. So we have ramps along those intended areas, as well as we've targeted areas adjacent to Cheyenne High School and Liberty Middle School. Obviously, working towards getting more of the ADA ramps adjacent to schools in compliance. So along with those school areas, the ramps along 19th Avenue East and 9th Street East as well. This project is intended to be paid for using the capital improvement sales tax funds. We do not intend to special assess any of these costs, and I would envision that each year we would be working with Public Works to identify what roadways they're going to be milling and overlaying, bringing forth those ADA ramps to bring into compliance on a yearly basis, as well as pick out another area that's in targeted areas, which is mostly starting out schools, retirement facilities, hospitals, medical facilities, things of that nature, and then eventually move into other neighborhoods from there. So this is something that is being designed in-house. We would be coordinating the inspection, the design, the inspection, the bidding, and construction administration of this project. So we're just looking at an estimated cost of $390,000, and again, that would just be paid for via capital improvement sales tax funds with no special assessments intended.
Any questions for Mr. Hanson? I have one question.
I have.
Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you. Dan, if you could hear me, did we budget any money in the CIP for this for next year for moving forward in future years?
Thank you for Commissioner Simmons for that question. I am currently working on the 2024 capital improvement plan, and in that capital improvement plan, I am budgeting approximately this amount on a yearly basis moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Does this come back before the commission if it goes over the 390,000 estimated budget?
Yeah, the next thing that would happen is we would approve this engineer's report, and then that would direct staff to do the plans and specifications. I'll come back with approval of the plans and specifications to get authorization to bid. We would do a public bid for it, and then we would come forth before the commission with the results of that bid for an award.
Same process we always do.
Correct.
That's the point I was trying to make. Thank you. Any additional questions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner George to approve, and a second by Commissioner Simmons. Been moved and seconded to approve and create a project number 6061, engineer's report, and direct the engineer to prepare plans and specifications for our 2024 ADA ramp improvements. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 11 is the City Administrator's Report. We'll call on Dustin Scott, City Administrator.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. Just a couple brief updates tonight. First one, on our move to the WEX building. Things are progressing fairly well and smooth. We are still on track to move in the first week of June. We haven't quite laid out the very specific details as to who's going to move first and when. Nick Lee is kind of managing this project. I think he's got a decent understanding of that, but I'm happy to report that things are moving quite smoothly. We are tracking under budget, and so hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll get to a point where we can start bringing commissioners over and take a look at the progress. Things to date, we've put up a dividing wall on the main floor. We have gotten significant progress on converting a couple of the conference rooms into a large training room. A whole number of things being done over there, but again, everything's going well and tracking for the first week of June. Any questions on that move to WEX?
Good.
Good. Next one, I might ask the chief to help me here a little bit, but an update on our police department expansion project. I know the chief's had a couple meetings with the architect. They've got a working group over at the police department. They're starting to get some preliminary options laid out, but still a long ways to go before we have some visuals to share with the commission. They are scheduling a few tours of facilities within the region, I think as early as even this week. Yep. So again, things are progressing quite nicely there, but still too soon to start sharing any visuals or cost estimates at this point. Just still a lot of fact finding and really trying to understand the needs of the department. So any questions with that? Anything to add, Chief? No? Okay, and then my last update here, just wanted to let the commission know I have reached out to Hyde Bailey to get started on our 2023 audit. Asked them to just start with a draft proposal. I would hope to be able to bring a draft proposal before the commission at the next meeting. But just again, a short, brief update that we are starting that conversation with them and recognize that we need to get started on that ASAP. So I have also received a couple inquiries on whether or not we should be looking into a forensic audit. I believe some of this came up last year as well. Certainly open to pursuing that further. I'm not quite familiar with how much that would cost or the time and resources it would take. But if the commission would want to direct me to look further into a forensic audit, I certainly would entertain such a motion.
Mayor,
Commissioner Simmons.
thank you. Just a comment, really. I would highly recommend that we hold off until we do the 2023 audit to see where we're at. The 2022 looked pretty good when I looked through, and I think that's a good indication, hopefully, that 2023 will look good, but I don't think we should do anything until we see that.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
Okay, with that, any other questions for me? That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any commissioner have anything that you'd like to bring forward this evening? Any non-agenda item? Staff, any non-agenda items you'd like to bring forward? All right. Before we close this evening, I'd like to again thank Thomas Fetter from Troop 279 for being with us this evening. It's a special event whenever we have a promotion for our law enforcement community. And for you to be a part of that as a young man within our community who are there sworn to protect and save, I'm just really pleased that you were here this night. Thank you for being here, Thomas. With that, Commissioner Simmons.
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson.
Second.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're going to miss Jay.